To be talking about today is smart goals and why you dealing the most damage in the game doesn't matter at all. Okay, there are certain stats that matter in this game for each role. We're going to go through each of them, and then there's a stat that everybody is not paying attention to that is probably one of the most important when it comes to climbing and getting better, and we're going to talk about that at the end of the video. So let's talk about what a SMART goal is. First off, a SMART goal is something that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Those are pretty self-explanatory. So the great thing about League of Legends is that it is a stat-based game. And because it is a stat-based game, that means that we can pick a bunch of stats in order to apply goals to that work conceptually within this format. Now, SMART goals are used in business, they're used in athletics, they're used in every high-performing area outside of League, so why not use them in League? So let's talk about one of the main specific measurable things that applies to literally every role in this game is CS. Now, you'll hear the term CS all the time when people say 10 CS a minute, 10 CS a minute, but 10 CS a minute is the result of proper spacing, proper cooldown management, proper last hitting, proper wave setup, right? It's a bunch of micro skills that have all been refined to the level that 10 CS a minute is possible, right? Resetting properly, etc. So you want to get your CS up, but the best place to start with that is to start with, am I not missing last hits? Am I not missing minions that are dying right in front of me because I'm just taking trades because I can take trades? That's the first place to start. Start there, and then there's a bunch of other concepts that you can learn, and I'll probably make a video on this to get your CS up. But CS is something that's very important. Ideally, in any lobby, you should be shooting for probably 150 to 160 farm at 20 minutes minimum. And that's minimum. That's in a game where you're fighting all the time. But otherwise, your CS, you want it higher than that. You want 170, 180, 200 at 20 minutes. You want that 10 CS a minute, okay? So let's move on to the roles now. Now we're going to talk about support. Support is pretty straightforward. If you're an enchanter, you want those healing numbers up. You want those shielding numbers up. If you're a tank, you want those tank numbers up. But more importantly, there are two other stats for support you really want to pay attention to in your post game to see how you're performing. And one is going to be wards. Wards, 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 wards. You have the most wards in the game. You have the ability to clear wards because you don't have to catch every wave. You should be clearing and placing more wards than anybody else in the lobby except maybe the other support. It is your job to protect your team by applying vision and allow them to pressure the map by applying vision. You have to have a good ward score as a support. It is just too important. The other thing that we need to talk about is your KDA. The support ideally is going to have the most assists in the game, but the only way you're going to have the most assists in the game and you're going to have a really high kill participation is if you are actually, and when I say kill participation, I mean assists and kills relevant to the score, the percentage of the score of kills that your team got. So if your team was in a game with 50 kills and you were assists or kills on 40 of them, that is a 80%. Okay, that's an 80% kill participation. That's phenomenal, right? I would say you want to shoot for a 75% kill participation if you can. You know, if you can't because you have someone who's just walking all over the game on your team and doesn't need any help, that's great. But ideally, you want to be there for those neutral objective fights. You want to be there for the first grub spawn. You want to be there for the dragons. You want to be there. So when you're at all of these objectives and you're also with your AD carry when they're taking these skirmishes, you should have a high kill participation. Now, this is a harder goal to manage than the ward score because it's not something you can individually control 100% of the time. But it is something that you should be paying attention to. We'll move next to AD carry. Now, AD carry, the damage dealt is going to be very important, but in order to get damage, you have to get your CS. You have to get your CS. AD carries have some of the most expensive items in the game, and most AD carries need 2 to 3 items before they come online, and there's no guarantee that you're actually going to be able to get kills bot lane if you have a support that's not very good at the laning phase. So you have to make sure you're picking up every single scrap of gold you can out of the minions. Now, once you have high CS, your damage should be pretty decent. But the biggest reason you see AD carries with a lot of items who aren't doing a lot of damage is because their spacing is wrong and they're dying too early in fights. So when you look at an AD carry, if you have a low KDA but no, if you have low deaths but you have no damage, you're spacing too far back. You're not actually involved in any of these fights. You're spending too much time just farming waves. You didn't transfer mid so that you could be present at all of these objective fights. You might be side laning too much, right? These are all things that we can measure and look at. Now, the other thing that you need to worry about as an AD carry more than your damage is that you don't have a high amount of deaths. Okay, and the reason for this is because as AD carry, you have the most damage on your team once you have completed items. That means, in most instances, you have the most damage. You're the highest dealing champion. So, in most instances, you want to survive the longest in fights so that you can keep outputting damage. That means that if you are an AD carry and you are dying first or second in a fight, unless 4 people flashed on you and there's point and click CC, you did something wrong. You spaced them properly. Your AD carry should not be dying first or second in a fight. If they are, then you need to start looking at your positioning so that you can reliably put out damage after you've gotten CS to get those numbers up. The next one we're going to talk about is going to be mid lane. Now, unironically, I believe that mid lane has just as much onus in the beginning of the game with vision as the support does. And the reason why is because it's very easy if you have priority as the mid laner to sneak off into fog, put a ward on the enemy rafters, put a ward near one of the jungle entrances, sneak a pink into the river, etc. These things are a huge help not only for your jungler, but your entire team to track the jungler and avoid dying to ganks. So if you have prio as a mid laner and you're not about to dive the enemy mid laner and kill them, you need to be using that to get vision down. Vision is an extremely important stat for mid laners. Now, as we said before, CS is an important stat for everybody, but the other thing that's important for mid laners is objective pressure. Now, objective pressure is something that we're going to talk about when it comes to top lane and mid lane specifically, because these characters later in the game become your side laners. They should be pressuring the tier 2s. Now, maybe they're a player like Malzahar and they don't actually have the ability to just get on a tier 2 and whack it. Maybe what they're doing is they're just pushing out side lanes and letting the minions chip down on them. But the most important thing is that we're in a position to do so. There should be some level of objective pressure. I want to see damage to towers. I want to see damage to inhibitors, right? Because you threatening that objective is what creates a numbers advantage so your team can get the neutral objective on the opposite side of the map. But if we're not threatening the objective, and we're not getting any damage on the objectives, then we're not really doing anything. This is another thing in the stats page that we can manage to see, hey, am I side laning correctly? Am I where I need to be at the right times? Am I helping my team get towers, etc.? Now, outside of that, mid lane is similar to top lane in that way, so we can move to top lane. Top lane, you're looking for objective, pressure, good CS. A lot of times your top laners will have some of the most damage in the game, but it's not because they're some godlike player. It's very easy to have the most damage in the game as a top laner because your matchups top lane are quite often very scrappy. You're playing against bruisers with high health, high sustain in lane, and because of this, there's a lot of trading back and forth. So by the time it gets to 10 minutes, you might already have 15,000 damage depending on the lane you're playing against, because you're playing against the Vladimir and you've just been poking him and he's just been healing back all of his health off the wave, right? So damage can be a deceiving number in top lane especially. So focus on the fact that, are you getting wards down when you can? Is your CS good? And are you pushing your lead on objective pressure, right? Now, with top laners, I don't think that KP is as important because some top laners are not built around team fighting. They're built around the 1v2, they're built around the 1v3, and they're meant to create side lane pressure. That's primarily what the role overall is for. That's why you see so many of these pro players playing a side lane and then they'll roam to a team fight, right? But they're not at the team fight to start. They always start in the side lane, then go to the team fight. The next role we're going to talk about is going to be jungle. Now with jungle, CS is important, especially because it means that you need to learn how to actually clear, and clear towards your winning lane. Clearing towards your winning lane allows you to do two things. It allows you to A, get priority so you can get neutral objectives, but you need to be able to path and clear correctly in jungle because you need to be able to hit your level 6 spike properly at the right timer so that you can stay relevant in the game. So then what's important for a jungler? Well, I want to see a decently high vision score. Like I said, you don't, like the support, you don't have to catch waves. So because you don't have to catch waves and you can operate in fog, that means that you're responsible for helping your team with that vision. Those early game wards in the enemy jungler entrances, those sweeping so that your team has vision control over the lane entrances, right? And your team isn't sitting, you know, under their tower with a pink and they can't move up at all or get anything done, right? Help with the wards. Now, CS for a jungler is a little bit difficult because the interesting thing about jungle is if you focus all of your time on clearing and you don't actually work with your team to do any ganks, do any neutral objectives and everything, you'll actually end up falling behind. And the reason why is because in jungle there is catch-up XP. So the enemy jungler who spent more time ganking and everything, they might be down a level at one point in the game, maybe in the mid game, but then after several camps they're going to catch right back up. So you may have a 20 CS lead, which is a gold lead maybe, but if they have 2-3 kills and they clear 2 more camps, then they're going to be the same level as you and they've had more map impact. So don't get too hung up on CS as a jungler, right? It is important in the early game, it's important for your clears, but it is not the end-all be-all of everything you do, right? You got to have more map awareness. Now, that's the other difficult thing about jungle is the map awareness. But with the map awareness and with the fact that you should be present at every neutral objective fight, you guessed it, the same exact stat that we're looking at for support applies to the jungle. You want a high KP. Now, as promised, the one stat that applies to everybody in this game that becomes relevant is deaths before 10 minutes. Now, if you died bot lane as a support so that your AD carry could get a double kill, or you died as the jungler after your full clear bot lane so your AD carry could get a double kill, fine. That's a great pre-10 minute death. Alright, now everybody else on the map. Everybody else on the map. Let's talk about, did we try to fight over Scuttle without priority and get collapsed on and die? Did we shove up to do a third wave crash even though we knew our jungler was pathing away from us and we were going to be weak-sided? Did we try to invade the enemy jungler because we egoed and thought that we were stronger? Did we not pay attention to the fact that we could get level 2 ganked mid and we died because we were egoing a trade and we thought that the guy we were playing against was just bad? Okay, every single death that happens pre-10 minutes, I guarantee 2 minutes, a minute and a half before, you made some sort of trade mistake, some sort of cooldown management mistake, some sort of wave management mistake, some sort of tracking the jungler mistake. You made some mistake that led to you getting killed, okay? If you can take every single death that you had pre-6 minutes in this game and you can start eliminating those, it is a huge advantage in League of Legends. Imagine if every lane you came out of, you were 2-0, and rather than being 2-6, right? Because I'd rather fight somebody being 2-0 than fight someone who's 6-2 in my lane, right? So think about that, right? A controlled game state where you're not feeding and you're playing really, really controlled is a good thing, okay? It gives opportunities for other players to not only help you win, but other players to potentially carry you. So take a look at those pre-10-minute deaths and really clean those up. And that's it for me. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.